According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, wetlands are areas that are inundated or saturated by surface or groundwater at a frequency and duration sufficient to support, and that under normal circumstances do support a prevalence of vegetation typically adapted for life in saturated soil conditions. Wetlands generally include swamps, marshes, bogs, and similar areas. There are two types of wetlands, ombrotrophic mires and minerotrophic mires, aka retrotrophic. Ombrotrophic mires are wetlands with a restricted supply of nutrients, so they can only sustain small amounts of plants and animals. This is when there is no input of nutrients from surface water or groundwater, which means that all the nutrients must come from precipitation, and minerotrophic mires are wetlands that get their nutrients from substances dissolved in water drainage from a higher up part of the watershed.
Wetlands play a huge role in our environment by providing shelter, food, and water to many different species. They also trap floodwaters, refill groundwater supplies, and remove pollution. Did you know that 90% of disasters are water-related, but reversing loss and damage to wetlands can be part of the solution? For example, in the Niger River Delta of West Africa, the wetlands that have long supplied the needs of tribal peoples and their grazing animals are now under threat from the development of dams and flood control schemes. Wetlands are a source of clean water, food, and food security, and biodiversity is also increased in wetlands. Wetlands also store carbon, which increases our capacity to adapt to climate change. In fact, over 1/3 of species on the U.S. endangered species list only live in wetlands.
Wetlands provide a habitat for producers, consumers, and decomposers, but because of the fragile balance of energy, the nutrient cycle can be thrown off.
High amounts of pollution have grave effects on wetlands. For example, pollutants such as mercury, which are deposited into streams and rivers by industrial plants that produce paper, have accumulated in wetland food webs and eventually reached human beings. Between 1953 and 1961, in the Bay of Minamata, Japan, mercuric sulfate from an industrial plant polluted coastal wetlands, including med-dwelling mollusks that accumulated the poison. Local fishers ate the mollusks and suffered mercury poison, which resulted in the death of 65 people before the cause was detected. Aluminum, another pollutant, kills tons of fish even though it is not as toxic as mercury. Aluminum is more soluble in acid waters, and the acidity of rain has greatly increased over the last 200 years, mainly as a consequence of industrial activities and the burning of fossil fuels. The resulting acid rain has made many wetland ecosystems more acidic, and this has affected invertebrate and fish populations. This is a big issue in a lot of northern countries, such as Canada, Finland, Sweden, and Norway, because of snow runoff into wetlands that is toxic. Finally, pesticides are another man-made issue that can damage wetlands. One of the worst was DDT, that was an insecticide used during World War II. It was sprayed onto wetlands to control the mosquito population. This killed many fish, and then it killed many fish-eating birds and disrupted the entire food web. It eventually affected predatory birds as well, because populations of bald eagles and peregrine falcons declined rapidly. Climate records of the past 150 years show that global climate has become warmer by about 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Wetlands are sensitive to the climate because they are dependent on water supply. The rain-dependent ombotrophic mires are more sensitive because they are directly affected by any slight change in rainfall, whereas the rheotrophic wetlands collect their water over a wide catchment and are therefore less sensitive. However, even these rheotrophic wetlands may suffer if the climate becomes warmer and drier, especially if they exist in arid regions. If the bog becomes really dry, then they may become a source of carbon as the peat deposits begin to decompose. They could also emit methane, another greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. There is also a danger that global warming may reverse the carbon-absorbing properties of the bogs and even turn them into a source of further warming in a kind of positive feedback loop.
Overexploitation in general terms is the overharvesting of natural resources to a point where they become increasingly harder to access. The overexploitation of wetlands is the extraction and drainage of water used for mostly agricultural purposes. Agricultural activities accounts for 65% of total water withdrawal on Earth, and in America, wetlands continue to be converted to farmland at a rate of about 600,000 acres per year. Untreated runoff from these farms containing nutrients and pesticides could contaminate wetlands through drainage and irrigation ditches. Wetlands that are mined for peat and phosphate require the clearing of vegetation and drainage of water. Grazing livestock use wetlands as a source of food and water and have also been shown to decrease streamside vegetation. Industrialization has also played a major role in the condition of most wetlands, as hydrocarbon contamination from oil and gas production can significantly degrade coastal wetlands. Most hydrocarbon pollution in the coastal wetlands are from coastal oil industry activities and oil spills. Oil can alter reproduction, growth, and behavior of wetland organisms and can result in the death of millions of trees and plants. Atmospheric deposition of chemical compounds in wetlands are also a result of industrial activities. Urbanization and the construction of roads and bridges results in impervious surfaces which block water from percolating into the soil of wetlands. Water diversion structures like canals and dams can alter the natural flow of water and can increase patterns of sedimentation. Organisms in wetlands can be impacted by this because they depend on the normal slow flow of water.
These are some ways you can help protect wetlands. Always report illegal activity, including dumping, clearing, or filling wetlands, to local authorities, including the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Pick up all litter you see and throw out your trash in the appropriate trash or recycling receptacles. Keep all surfaces that drain into bodies of water clear of all toxins, fertilizers, and car oil. Be sure to plant only native plants. Use phosphate-free laundry detergent and dishwasher detergents. Use non-toxic household cleaning products and never spray garden fertilizer on a windy or rainy day because it will end up in the closest waterway. And remember, always reduce, reuse, and recycle.